Ви виновник торжества, ми так.
Так ще краще. Влада, громадськість.
Це теж влада вже майже.
Ні, він маскується.
Що я маскуюсь? Я теж це саме якийсь експерт.
Я вас хотіла вирушувати на тему. Про всяк випадок пригадую, що в нас є переклад англійською мовою синхронний, тому прохання говорити не поспішаючи і обережно тримати темп, щоб за вами встигали перекладачі, щоб переклад був справді якісний. Якщо ви будете трошки забувати, я буду показувати табличку «Говорить по-юріше».
Добре.
Також прохання дотримуватися регламенту, щоб ми завершили вчасно.
Коли ми маємо завершити?
Наступна подія в 2 годині вже починається, без 5:02 треба закінчити. Тобто, що лишилося час на запитання і ставки.
По 10 хвилин, нормально, це по 10 хвилин кожен щось виступає.
Якщо ви повністю готові, якщо всі презентації, які ми планували вже техніків,
Немає презентації.
добре, тоді за 2 хвилини почнемо. Добрий день, продовжуємо.
Good afternoon. We continue our work at Kiev Ukraine Crisis Media Center. And our topic is 10 pilot ministries anticipating reform, how the government is going to improve their performance. Our speakers are Tetiana, Kovtun, Deputy State Secretary of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, Igor Koliushko, Chairman of the Center of Policy and Legal Reform, Serhii Soroka, Manager of the Reanimation Package of Reform Group, Public Administration Reform, and Evhen Kapinus, State Secretary of the Ministry of Finance of Ukraine. Dear panelists, you are welcome. Dear colleagues, the government 1 month ago launched the reform of 10 ministries and the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. It is aimed at strengthening the quality of managerial decisions of our government so that strong analytical basis is used and the decisions are more substantiated and better grounded. One of the tools why is reform of ministries, why we start with reforming the ministries when we are speaking about the quality of governmental decisions, because ministries are institutions which prepare these governmental decisions. We proceed from two fundamental pillars that the ministries are responsible for articulating proposals on governmental policy, because inside executive authority they are the ministries who are responsible. This is logical, and the competence of each minister should be clearly defined. Which minister is responsible for what scope of mandate. We have already a model, an optimal model as we see it, where each ministry will have mandate of 5 through 7 governmental policies in the scope of this ministry's competence, and directorate for developing and implementing and articulating these policies and monitoring and assessment of implementation will be established. So civil servants of new quality will be nurtured by us this way in the course of reform. These new civil servants will meet requirements to deeper and analytical studies in order to carry out such activities. Civil servants should meet new profile. They should be not just a managerial staff member. This should be analytics who understand the problems in focus in society, which our population is concerned about, and who knows what optimum decision should be taken, which is pro or contra governmental interference. We have selected 10 ministries by principles that they are critical for the implementation of the most important reforms in the country, which are ongoing: the pension reform, healthcare reform, education reform, decentralization reform, and of course, the most important aspects are justice and public finance. So these are critical ministries, and it is important to change the role and functions of the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, which should coordinate and summarize all this analytical data from the ministry so that they are in line with the governmental priorities. The Secretariat should monitor this. Thank you, Tetiana. I would start with accenting on the quality of governmental policy. What governmental policy means? There's the line, the strategy, the path which the country will go forward, and the quality of governmental policy in democratic countries depends on the government, its capacity to propose well-grounded and somewhat methodologically studied solutions to the problems in society in different areas. We got used to see that everything depends on the parliament and the president in our country. Yet they are the most important bodies of political power in the country, but the quality of the decisions mostly depends on the capabilities of governmental bodies to prepare efficiently the draft decisions. When we are talking about our government, this is not only meetings of the cabinet. Government is composed of ministries and domestic and foreign experts. For many years have been stating, and our ministries are weak. They were not initiative. They have not expressed any initiative to change the situation, to address the problems, to efficiently, fast elaborate proposals, even when they have been instructed to do so, because they haven't had any analytical studies data. So the society didn't understand what the government was doing. The society used to suspect that the only thing which the government is doing is stealing their money. And motivation patriotic motivation was lacking, so this reform focuses on resolving all these problems. For the first time in Ukraine, the government tries to launch this new sound principles, which are just normal way of activities in the European countries. In 2014, when Europeans started visiting Ukraine more frequently, the European authorities, members who visited Ukraine, and European politicians, they understood that the quality of executive agencies in Ukraine is low. Starting with 2005, the draft concept of reforming public administration was considered in 2008 and 2009, but the government has not voted for, has not supported it. This time, it seems to be the first serious attempt to implement this reform. What does this mean? This means in practice that the ministers of the first wave, not pilot, I would say, we just do not have enough experts to assign to every ministry. That is why we divided our experts and assigned them to those ministries which are most critical. Outsourced experts are included into the work groups. Work groups are the main elements of the reform. The work group defines what sphere of policy is inside the responsibility of this ministry, what are the functions besides articulating the policy this ministry should define. Sometimes it is not easy, but this has been addressed now. What functions are auxiliary in this ministry? So all definitions should be given, and who is responsible for what, and general directorates should be established. The one main function is to analyze the developments in the sphere of their responsibility, communicate to stakeholders, representatives of various social groups who are main recipients of the policy of this ministry, and to monitor their feedback to their proposals, prepare various solutions to the problems, and based on all this and continuous communication with the society to communicate well-grounded proposals such as concept strategies and other policy documents, and after they are approved by the parliament or president, then they will be implemented by drafting regulatory documents by the same ministers. This is the responsibility of general directorates, and they should not be overloaded with any other administrative functions. They should not issue any permits or licenses or to manage some enterprises, etc., etc. These functions shall be responsibility of other departments of the ministry. So this is in focus of the work groups in these ministries. The work groups for reforms. We as experts hope that we expect that engaging new reformists in the scope of these general directorates we will establish comfortable conditions, think tanks at every ministry, in fact, where the staff, the experts who are able to dream and make their dreams come true, where they can be capable to work. These people should not address any functions where they should do something very fast to implement the laws. So there's delimitation. There's clear definitions of the responsibility. This is how we can describe this reform.
Good afternoon. Actually, we did not agree between ourselves what we are going to talk about. Just to echo what Igor mentioned, I would like to continue kind of to bridge the gap between him and what I'm going to say. I work in the Office of Reform of the Minister of the Communal Services, and our employees know that there will be the working group, there will be rearrangements, structure, reforms, and now there is some fear and confusion. Now, what we are going to get as a result of that, I would like to mention that this reform is the human being centric. In what we already mentioned and presented, we are not talking about the downsizing of the number of our personnel. I mean, reduction of the number of personnel. At least in the Ministry of the Regional Development, we would like to create a kind of ministry of the future. So to create a good atmosphere, interesting for people to work in, and interesting work to be properly remunerated by the government, and so that people would believe this is a kind of prestigious work. We discussed some of the issues and the tasks, and what the managers or heads of the departments tell me in the ministry, that the functions they have, for example, during the working hours, they are not involved in some kind of creative work, formation of the future of the work. They actually draft some of the assignments, and they participate in different meetings, etc., etc. And only after 6 p.m. they can actually deal or do some work which is expected from the ministry, and not always because they have to hurry to their home places to attend to their family, children, etc., etc. But only as per 1800 hours they can actually start to do something like formation of the policy and the strategy and sphere they're responsible for. On the other hand, I must say that we would like to create in the Ministry of Regional Development and the let's say Communal Services, the Minister of the Future, as I mentioned before. We have to optimize the working processes so that our employees should deal within working hours. You have to determine the priorities, what they have to do. First of all, on this primary task, secondary task, what would be important for the sphere they're responsible for. And only then they have to be equipped with the tools, the instruments, what they can do very quickly and efficiently. I mean, those tasks and functions and duties which are of technical nature. Another story that as a result of our analysis, we have to establish those functions which are kind of outdated, obsolete. We have to eliminate those, like providing services, etc., etc. Those functions sooner or later have to be delegated to some other bodies of executive power, or inspectorates, or decentralized, Once again, I would like to emphasize that we are not talking about downsizing of the number of the personnel. We are talking about providing some other functions or duties in addition to the work done by our employees. One more thing. Recently, I read some analytical analysis. What is the best motivation for the people when they choose this or another job? When we started the reform of the public service, we had one of the requests, just provide us a better salary, we're going to do anything, In fact, this is not really true. We have, by the way, a different approach what kind of motivation we are going to offer to our employees in new units and subdivisions. But actually, what that document said, that the salary in this system priorities or the motivation, it occupies the 5th place. Number 1 goes. Very important whether we are satisfied with our job, with what we are doing. So the first place goes recognition of properly and well done work. Second place goes to the following. The employees would like to know exactly what they are doing, what for, what is the objective, etc. Third place goes to the issue of recognition. Again, it's very important for the people. Attention paid to their personal needs and requirements. The first place goes to the issue of the let's say, recognition, and again, the 5th place goes to the salary. You understand that a good salary, this is a relative notion. For somebody, 5,000 is good. To another person, 10,000 is okay. To the third person, even 20,000 is not satisfactory. So we should not actually consider salary the motivation for a good job. But anyway, a salary must actually meet the level of qualification, the quality of work done by this or another employee. Once again, I would like to note here that the objective of our effort is to create, or reform, is to create not only the efficient, responsible, and good outcome ministries, but to create the terms and conditions for our employees, for them to kind of to realize their desires and expectations. You know that many countries, the state is the best actually employer. We know that reform never ends, but the first stage we have to complete it by the year 2020. Before I pass the mic to Evhen, I was just sitting and tried to remember at least a dozen times over the last 3 years in this audience as well. I was telling during different meetings, press conferences, I was telling that we had to have the state secretaries, that we have to pass the law on this public service, which would introduce the state secretaries. There were a lot of stories how they deprived us of the right to have the state secretaries. Now I have a chance to introduce to you a live state secretary in one of the key ministries in our country, the Minister of Finance.